freight train, moves so fast. Freight train, moves so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know which way I've gone. It's a little bit of a well-known old folk tune called Freight Train, written by a legendary North Carolina singer, songwriter, guitar player named Elizabeth Cotten. If you've not heard any of her recordings, I strongly suggest you look them up. She was a unique and powerful voice in American folk music, influenced a lot of very famous bands. My introduction to her music came through the Grateful Dead, who recorded a number of her songs. And I thought this song was a good example for relating a technique, a style of fingerpicking commonly known as Travis picking, after Merle Travis, who was one of the most celebrated practitioners of the style, one of the popularizers, but there have been many. Chet Atkins is another huge one. Mississippi John Hurt, Doc Watson, Lester Flatt played a bit like this. Townes Van Zandt played his own variation of this style. John Prine does it. And in fact, Travis picking could easily have been cotton picking. Elizabeth Cotten played a bass and melody finger style similar to this, except that as a left-handed player with a right-handed guitar, she flipped it, did it upside down, played the bass notes with her fingers and the melody notes with her thumb, which, I don't know about you, but that seems pretty intimidating to me, kind of like trying to write a novel in a mirror or something like that. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone do it Elizabeth Cotten's way in person. But Travis picking is built around a bass line played with the thumb and then melody notes played with the fingers. And you can get a lot of combinations that way. So when you're learning any new technique, it's a good idea to break it down and slow it down. Break it down into chewable sized chunks and then chew the chunks slowly. I feel like the tendency is to go the other way with it. People always try to jump into something too fast. They want to sound athletic and impressive on their instrument, and instead it usually just ends up a jumble of poor timing and poor technique. So don't be afraid to get out a metronome and use that. I think more people ought to. It'll kind of help keep you anchored back at a speed that you're comfortable with until you can turn that metronome dial up. And just start out getting your thumb used to doing that alternating bass pattern. Now we're in the key of C here for Freight Train, and the bass pattern is going to be built off of the root note of your chord. So I'm going C, E, G, E, C, E, G, E. I could also just simplify that even more and just use C, E, C, E. But it's an eighth note pattern. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and your thumb's going to be doing that throughout the whole song. It's just going to be playing that driving eighth note pattern. So you know exactly where your thumb's doing, and then that frees you up once you get used to that, once you kind of internalize that rhythm, to figure out where your melody notes are going to fall against those bass notes. Now again, your bass notes are just straight eighths, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And the way I think to get your mind around this style and your hands around it is just to really slow it down and figure out when your fingers are going to be plucking on a beat together and when they're going to be syncopated, when the melody note's going to be off the beat or around the beat. And that was why I chose Freight Train, because the melody, the vocal melody, falls directly on the quarter note beat a good percentage of the time. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. So it's a fairly straight melody, and when you're starting out with Travis picking, it's a lot easier when it coincides, when your bass line and your melody line coincides, because picking at different times is going to be one of the things that kind of throws you. But again, you just need to slow it way down, and counting here is going to help you too. The 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and count. Figure out whether that note falls on the 1 or what does it fall on the 1 and, or where is it. Slow it down until you can get a grasp on that, and then just gradually pick up speed. And don't be afraid to work on one little tiny chunk of the song. For however long your practice session is, you might not get the whole thing. You might just get, just keep doing that. And then once you've gotten your basic melody and bass combination, you're feeling fairly comfortable with it at a slow tempo, you can embellish it, because this sounds a little flat. Right? I like to do kind of a triplet feel on it, so it's something like this. Add your own little licks and embellishments to it. You can listen to what other people have done and steal their licks, because that's what music is. We're all a bunch of thieves and pirates. And one of my favorite ways as a songwriter to learn a new technique is to write something that utilizes that technique. I first started fingerpicking maybe around 10 years ago, at the same time that my band Vinegar Creek Constituency was forming and coming up with our first album. And so I wrote a song for that album called Big Blue Sky that uses Travis picking. Took me a very long time to do, and a lot of obscenities and wall kicking. But after I'd written it, I felt like I had a much better grasp of the technique, because I'd broken it all down and put it together in the form of something new. That I'm palm muting the bass strings there, because that kind of percussive thump is a very different effect if you let those notes ring out. So a lot of times finger pickers will use their palm to mute there. Yeah, make something up using that technique. It'll really deepen your understanding of it, even if it's nothing that you ever intend to publish or perform in person, or even admit under torture to having written. It's a beneficial exercise. And, well, friends, I'm tempting fate here, because there's a couple of dogs circling the legs of my camera tripod like sharks. It's only a matter of time before the whole thing comes down. I hope you're benefiting a little bit from this new little video series I've made. The idea for me is that I've come across so many talented players in my work as a musician, that there's so much that I can learn from these people who I admire, who inspire me, and then share that with you, because we're all kind of in this together. If we're paying attention, then we're all learning from each other, and that's really the way that it should be. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions about this technique. Feel even freer to contact someone who's better at it than me and ask them. Let's all share what we've got. Thanks, folks.